Maxey from outside. Sixers lead, courtesy of Tyrese Maxey.
Hit deep to left field, going back is Locastro. It is gone!
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beef Up Front podcast here on Pick Swap Media. Your host, Ryan Coyle, as always, as we roll on with our college football preview series for the upcoming 2025 season. Kind of making our way, trying to do it evenly proportioned throughout each of the conferences. And then as we get towards the back half of this preview, as we get closer and closer to kickoff, I'm going to give more of those top SEC and Big Ten teams. But so far, we've been keeping it even. SEC, we did Oklahoma and South Carolina. Big Ten, we've done USC and Michigan. ACC, we've done Clemson. Today, we will be doing Miami. And then the Big 12, we did Texas Tech. And then our next episode in the Big 12 after this one will be Arizona State. So here we are on August 6th. We're just about, this upcoming Saturday, 2 Saturdays until live action college football. So it's getting here before we know it. I think we got 5 games this year, or 5 or 6 games in week 0. And then we have a loaded week 1 slate, including today's team, Miami, playing Notre Dame in one of the highlight games of week 1, maybe one of the highlight non-conference games on the schedule for the entire season. So as we do with every preview video, we'll start at the top with the head coach. We'll go down, recap the 2024 season. Then we'll take a look ahead to the offense and the defense for this upcoming year. Then go through the schedule prediction and some gambling things, whether we like the over-under for them to win the national championship, win the conference, make the playoff, miss the playoff, and go by a game-by-game schedule breakdown. So, like I said, we'll start at the top, as always, with the head coach for the Miami Hurricanes as we enter 2025, Mario Cristobal. 84-76 all-time record. I think that record is a little bit skewed. I think he's a better coach than that. He started at FIU early in his career. Say what you want about that program, but I think he's done pretty well at Oregon. He's kind of got Miami, I think, going in the right direction now. 22-16 at Miami. He's been there since the start of the 2022 season. 3-5 in his career in bowl games, but at Miami, he went 5-7 in year 1, 7-6 last year. Entered the year kind of on the hot seat. I think it was expected for them to be competing for an ACC championship, at least be in the mix as they got into one of those last 2 weeks of the season. And if that wasn't the case, I think we could have seen Mario Cristobal on his way out. Miami alum, a legacy type of coach at this program. And they do have a bit of that breakout year last year. I think it still ended disappointingly for how the season started, but they go 10-3. Mario is regarded as one of the best offensive line coaches, both on the offensive line and defensive line. I think that's where kind of his strengths have always been in terms of coaching. You look at his coaching background, coached at Alabama, coached the offensive line for a long time, and he's known as a great recruiter. But Mario Cristobal has struggled on game days. I think his teams have played down the competition. We can point right to the 2024 season as they lost a few key games as they were competing for that ACC title. He just doesn't always have this team ready to go on game day, and then he makes a couple bonehead decisions as well. I think you can point to some of those losses at the end of last year that you can point directly to the head coach and blame Mario Cristobal for some of those losses. You even remember 2 years ago, the game against Georgia Tech, where they don't take the knee, they're running the ball, they fumble, and they lose that game. Mario Cristobal has had some blunders on game day. He's been great during the week. He's been great on the recruiting trail. But come game day, Mario Cristobal is a bit of a red flag, and it's impacted his teams wherever he's gone. When you look at the 2024 season and kind of recap that, it started out great. It started out as a great season for the Miami Hurricanes in 2024. Started out 9-0, go down to the swamp and beat Florida 41-17 for the season opener. That puts everyone on notice. The world learns about Cam Ward in that game. But then you fast forward to the end of the season, as I said, play down to their competition, lost 3 of their last 4, including the bowl game to Iowa State. Cam Ward sits out the second half in that game, but still they lose 3 of their last 4, including that bowl game. Failed to make the ACC title game due to losing at Georgia Tech and at Syracuse down the stretch. And while they came up short of their goals of an ACC title and of a playoff berth, I think last year was still kind of the breakout year the program needed. Going from 7-6 to 10-3, you can't make any arguments about that there was improvement there, that they definitely looked better. I thought they got better definitely on the field. Cam Ward, I thought, carried them low a lot of those games. But it's a team that I liked they were my national title pick last year. I kind of always like to go a little bit off the wall. I don't like to pick the number 1 or 2 team, and Miami was making me look pretty smart throughout the season. when we kind of got towards the end of the season, was like, all right, they're good, they're undefeated, but I don't know if they're going to knock off an Ohio State. I don't know if they're going to knock off a Texas or a Georgia or so on in the playoff. But they were all on the right path, and who knows? You get into the playoff, anything can happen from there. But they were as high as number 4 in the nation last year at one point. They put up 40 or more 8 times, turned Cam Ward into the number 1 pick, and it's been said before that Mario Cristobal has been a quarterback killer, hasn't been great with the quarterbacks, and they find a way to turn Cam Ward, a kid from Washington State, into the number 1 overall pick. And I think if they make the playoff, I think there's a good chance that Cam Ward's probably your Heisman Trophy winner last year as well. But they fell short in some big moments as a team. But I do think last year showed what this program is still capable of and what they're kind of building as they go into 2025. Can they carry that momentum and kind of that success of that 10-win season into 2025? That remains to be seen, but we'll get into that right now. We'll talk about the offense, we'll talk about the defense, and then, as I said, go through a whole schedule breakdown, some gambling stuff as well. The offense, the main reason why I think the Miami Hurricanes in 2025 are going to be a disaster is due to the quarterback spot on this team led by Georgia transfer Carson Beck. Never been a believer in Carson Beck. I don't like him. I don't like looking at him. I think he's an ugly quarterback. That might have part of the reason why I don't like him. But from everything you hear about him, it sounds like he's not a very likable guy. It sounds like he's not a guy that's wanted, in the locker room. Georgia kind of was just like, all right, don't let the door hit you on the way out. We'll arrive at Gunnar Stockton. Miami goes out and severely overpays for him. He's got the offseason drama with the girlfriend. He's coming off this crazy arm injury as well. I think he's overrated. I think he's always been overrated. I think he's going to lead Miami to a disaster season next year, this upcoming season. Cam Ward, I think last year is going to look like 2019 freaking Joe Burrow compared to Carson Beck this season. I think everyone in the Miami fan base is going to be looking back and be like, what the hell are we watching now compared to last year? Too many turnovers for my liking. 12 interceptions 2 years ago at Georgia. Coming off this major injury, also lost their top running back in Damian Martinez, who rushed for 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. I think this offense is in for a big step back. The offensive line should still be really good. Anytime Mario Cristobal is overseeing an offensive line unit, it should be pretty good. They got a top 5 pick in Mauoga, I believe is how you pronounce it. Top 5, top 10 projected offensive tackle there. So they should give him at least a chance every week. If Beck doesn't turn the ball over, they should be in games. But I just don't trust him. I don't think he's a great player. I think he was overrated going into last year. He made me look smart last year. Eventually gets hurt. You never want to see that. But still, it's a situation where Georgia's offense, I think, even looked better kind of without him and with Gunnar Stockton in down the stretch. So I think Carson Beck's in for a really bad year. I think he's going to be an undrafted player come here, and Miami's one of my biggest fades. Last year, they were my team. I was propping them up all season. Very similar to Florida State, where 2 years ago, Florida State was my team. I picked them to go to the national title. They were probably going to the playoff. They were going to win the ACC with Jordan Travis, and then he gets hurt. Then I said going into last year, I thought that team was ready to take a step back. I didn't think 2-10, but I thought more so along the lines of 6-6, 7-5, somewhere in that range. Besides before the 11-0, 12-0 that they were going to be with Jordan Travis leading the way for them last year. Same thing this year. I was really high, last season with Miami, I was really high on them. I'm expecting them to really take a step back this year. I think it's a significant drop off from Cam Ward, Carson Beck, and I think Cam Ward covered up a lot of flaws for that team last year. So they also lose number 1 receiver Xavier Restrepo, who had 1,100 yards and 11 touchdowns, one of the all-time leading receivers at the University of Miami. They do go in and bring C.J. Daniels from Liberty, he was at Liberty 2 years ago where he had over 1,000 yards, had 480 yards at LSU last year. Didn't really fit in there that much, but still had some moments. I think that's a good kind of transition from Restrepo for this Miami offense. He should be one of the better receivers in the ACC, but it's a really unproven group of pass catchers. They lost their top 5 from last year's pretty loaded offense. Mix that in with the new quarterback coming off an injury. I just don't like this offense and the recipe for success this year. So very down on this Miami offense, and I think it's going to be the Achilles heel. Can the defense kind of lift them up? That could potentially, inflate that record a little bit, but I think this offense is headed for a really bad year. When you look at the defense, though, I have some more faith, as I said, on this side of the ball. Return 8 starters from last year, but it wasn't a great unit last year. It allowed 25.3 points per game. And while the offense more than carried their weight, this unit let Miami down, and especially Cam Ward down in those losses. They lost 28. They allowed 28 points to Georgia Tech, 42 to Syracuse, and 42 to Iowa State in the bowl game in their 3 losses. Also gave up 30 or more 6 different times. If Cam Ward's not going out there putting up 30 plus himself. This is a team that probably last year isn't 10-3, but more so a 7-6 or something in that range, just like the year before. I really think Cam Moore covered up a lot of flaws for them last year. They bring in a new defensive coordinator, Corey Heatherman. He was at Minnesota last year, and they have a very strong defensive line. When you look at the strength of this team, I look at both of the offensive and defensive line. That's where kind of Mario's strengths have always been. Ruben Bain highlights this group on the defensive side of the ball. Edge rusher, he's getting first-round buzz. Going to be one of the first 2 or 3 edge rushers most likely off the board. The pass rush had 36 sacks last year, which is a strong number, was the strength of that defense for sure. But a lot of those games they were ahead. These teams were coming from behind, being forced to go out and throw the ball 40, 50 times in some of those high-scoring affairs. You're going to get some sacks just due to the volume of pass rushes you're doing. So number might be a little skewed. They lose the heartbeat and the soul of that defense last year in Francis Mauaga. 96 tackles, 2 sacks, 9 tackles for loss on the year. That's a big thing that they're going to have to replace. Can they have a new leader of the defense show up? Need someone to step up there and be kind of the guy, be the captain. The secondary, too, when you look at it, they didn't lose any guys to the draft, and they added 6 transfers. They should be able to improve there. And if Bain can be a game wrecker and the secondary can just kind of hold their own and be average, should be one of the better defenses in the ACC. Get to the schedule prediction now, break it down game by game, and a little gambling talk as well for this team. Over, under heading into the year, 9.5 wins. Over is plus 135. Under, juice to minus 160. Miami is 40-1 to win the Natty. Save your money on that one. Plus 380 to win the ACC, which is the second best, which I think is crazy. Plus 170 to make the playoff, and minus 220 to miss the playoff. We'll go by this game by game. Notre Dame. They host Notre Dame in week 1. That's game on Sunday. All eyes are going to be on that game. I believe it's a standalone game there. I have them losing that game. I think Notre Dame has a potential to go undefeated, and I think that's kind of the first wake-up call for this Carson Beck-led offense. Next 2 games, Bethune-Cookman and South Florida. I'll give them W's there, move to 2-1. But here we go, where we're starting to get really tough. Versus Florida. Florida's coming for revenge. After last year's beatdown from Miami, Florida's coming for revenge. I think they go down to Coral Gables, and they get the win in this one. I think DJ Lagway severely outplays Carson Beck in this game, and Miami falls at 2-2, and major questions begin to arise for this big money quarterback that, it's rumored that they gave $3-4 million to, and I think he's really going to underperform. At Florida State, I think Florida State bounces back a bit this year to like a 7-5, 8-4. From that 2-10, I think Castellanos is going to be much better than DJU was. I'm going to give the Seminoles a win there. Miami goes on the road and loses in that game. Then they host Louisville. Really like Louisville. We'll talk about them in a later episode, but I think that's a 9-10 win team. I like Louisville to win that game too. I'm not afraid of going to Miami. It's not an intimidating environment. I think this is a headed for disaster type of season for the Hurricanes, and I think Mario could be out if this is the record, or it kind of gets pegged on Carson Beck and he gets one more chance. First, Stanford will give him a W there. At SMU, I expect to be competing at the top of the ACC again. Probably not going to the playoff or as good as last year, but I still like them to be a force in the ACC this year. On the road, Miami in that one, give them an L. They host Syracuse and they host NC State. I think Syracuse takes a step back. I'll give Miami the benefit of the doubt at home there. NC State, too. Don't really know what to expect from them. I think they're a bit of an unknown in the ACC. Give them a win there. At Virginia Tech, I think Virginia Tech is an 8-4-ish squad this year. That's a really tough environment to go to. People, the Virginia Tech fans will be getting up for that game. The chance to probably going into that game, they're probably looking at 7 or 8 wins already on the schedule of Virginia Tech. You got a chance to maybe be like a 9 or 10 win team. That's a big game for that Virginia Tech fan base as they try to get back to the top of the ACC as well. I like Virginia Tech to win that one. And then at Pitt, this is a game too where I'm going to give Miami a little bit more credit and just give them a win in this one to get bowl eligible. I don't think they're going to be a total disaster like a 4-win team this year. But if it gets to this point of the season and it's like, all right, we need to win this one to be bowl eligible, does Carson Beck really even go out there? What does he have to do at that point? The season is a disaster. Are the guys really going to want to go out there and be bowl eligible? Who knows? I think that's a kind of look in the mirror type of game, and you could just basically be like, we're quitting at this stage. I'll give them a win here, even though it's on the road at Pitt. I think they're still solid enough around Beck to get them to bowl eligibility. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if this Miami team's sitting there at 5-7 this year. So with that being said, under 9.5 wins for Miami at minus 160 is one of my favorite plays in all of college football this year for preseason win totals. I think you can move that to under 8.5. And I think you could even move that to under 7.5 and still feel pretty good. I think the ceiling for this team is probably 8 wins. But I think you're more so looking at a 7-5 to a 5-7 at the end of the day for this Miami squad. I think it's a terrible year. I think it's all because Carson Beck leading the way at the quarterback spot. Super down on him, and I don't think there's an NFL future for that guy going forward. But that's it for our ACC episode here on the Miami Hurricanes. As I said, next episode we transition over to the Big 12 and the Arizona State Sun Devils. One of the pleasant surprises of last year's college football season. Look forward to diving into those guys. But as always, appreciate everyone for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and we'll be talking to you next time here on Pick Swap Media.